Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer and Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel. We are in spooky season. October has arrived, which means Halloween is at the end of the month. I want to do a topical song. It's a new song and happens to be topical, so that worked out. Today we are going to talk about Cellar Door by Wussy Duo. Wussy is a band, and both members of the duo are in the band. It's like their side project without their full band. I'm not like a Wussy super fan where I have all the background information. This is a new song. This is off a new EP they're releasing. So new music, excited to talk about it. Not a band I've talked about before. Let's go there now. Maybe, if I can remember where I put my screen. Found it. All right. This song has just been like ear candy for a couple weeks since I first heard it. It came out not that long ago. It has the refrain hits with both singers singing different melody lines. And my ADHD kind of lights up. Oh, that's fun. And each time I listen to it, I'm listening to something different because you really can't follow both of those lines at the same time. The lyric video, fingers crossed, the algorithm that shall not be named doesn't block this for copyright. Lyric video is really helpful because your brain can really only process one of those inputs at one time. So spooky season, right? So we're walking through a cemetery. We wanted to go around it, but there wasn't another way. I really like the line "wheelies on sacred grounds." I don't know, like there's some version of um, being in the presence of like wanting to do a wheelie, but also knowing that like other people would think like, "Oh, this is sacrosanct. This is sacrilegious. We shouldn't be doing that." Like a cemetery doesn't really have its own rules and regulations. Like there are some, but all that stuff is social constructs, how we are supposed to be sort of somber in our grief. Like that's not an everywhere sort of thing. Not every culture does it that way. So there is no rule against doing a wheelie through a cemetery if you're going through the cemetery because it's the path you have to take. But like something about it feels wrong. And work with religious trauma, like I think that line's a lot of fun because it's about being in the present moment and kind of knowing what you want to do and holding space for that. And a little bit of like middle finger to the law, like your social constructs are stupid and I don't have to follow them if I don't want to. So I'm going to do a wheelie because I feel like it, even though maybe I shouldn't be doing a wheelie because it's in a cemetery. Should is one of those asterisk words for me. Should, according to what? And usually there isn't a good reason. Like my mom said it, or my dad said it, or the church, or society at large. But like based on what? Why did they say it? Well, there wasn't a good reason. Like it's just sort of this implied correct thing to do. That's not a good way to do it. So I also love. Let's see. Let's pick the male singer. His line, kind of going through the chorus. Um, I really love the idea of like whistling past a graveyard is denying it exists. Like we have these quirks. There's cognitive dissonance about our fear when we're doing something that we sort of have to be doing. So walking at night, walking through a graveyard. These are things where we'll do something like whistle, or we do something like hum a little tune. When I was a little kid and scared of basements, like I would sort of hum my way through the basement. I had a lot of health trauma, so I thought like I don't know demons or something. I also am a true arachnophobe, so I don't like spiders. And I know there are more spiders in the basement. But like kind of hum a little tune and then like hustle your way away from the thing that's scaring you, and that way you're safe from the big bad basement. Like this is a thing that I've been familiar with, probably because I did it. Like it is a psychological concept, and then I feel a little crazy whenever I mention that. Like singing a little song or whistling or doing a little ditty while you're scared helps you be less scared. And it's just like sort of taking a shortcut in our brain. It doesn't do anything to the thing that is scaring us or that we're afraid of, but we're sort of cognitively aware that the fear isn't very pressing. Like cemeteries make us uncomfortable not because zombies are going to attack us, but because our brain isn't like processing its own mortality. But that doesn't mean that being in a cemetery is scary. We're not more likely to die. I mean, I'm going to statistically guess that deaths that occur in a cemetery are very low. There's just a lot of dead people there. And so it's one of those things where our brain is like misfiring on why we're scared. And it sort of knows that. So it's taking this thing that has nothing to do with the fear to make us feel a little bit better. I also think there's some regulation that can happen through something like that. So, like whistling through our fear, singing through our fear, laughing or talking through our fear, right? Like most of us have our phone with us 24/7 now. So maybe we're talking on the phone. Like call up that friend because like it's kind of creepy out. We don't want to be alone. But like by virtue of calling our friend, they're not with us. They're someplace else. They cannot keep us safe. And yet we feel better about it because our brain is processing that other stimuli. So this is a whole phenomenon, and it's come up a couple times recently where I've referenced it, and nobody has picked up on it or known what I was talking about. And so I was ecstatic when this song came out because like, see, it's a whole thing. Also, Cellar Door, little Donnie Darko reference thrown in there. Not really in the song, just like for those of you who are also millennials and remember Donnie Darko. Cellar Door, the most acoustically pleasing word and phrase in the English language. I don't think that's true. I refuse to look it up because it's canon in the movie, and I don't want to know if it's not true. Let's go to verse 2. The the other chorus. So let's talk about verse two for just a sec. There's sort of this like we're walking through the graveyard in verse one, and it's in part two, and then it's almost the perspective shifts, and then we're talking from the perspective of someone who's already in the ground. Um, so like I shudder when you walk upon my grave, but I return the wave. I'm looking for you too. Like there's this connection. Uh, which I don't think this is what the song is about, but the psychological concept that comes to mind attached to that is like this fear of death that we have, the fear of our own mortality. If we lean into it, if we sort of accept and don't turn away from it, don't try and avoid it, but actually lean into it a little bit and understand that like we have an expiration date, and we don't need to be afraid of it. Like we don't need to live our lives in that idea of like we're dying imminently, but also that like we have limited time here. So like worrying about sending that work email and stressing about it for 2 or 3 days before you finally send it probably isn't like a great use of our time. Capitalism's not a good use of our time. So there's the peril of digging in too far there of like, well, I don't want to do this. Like no shit, like the 40-hour work week and not having a middle class and no social climbing and making money for shareholders is like a stupid existence. Not shaming any of you who are participating in that existence. Most of us weren't given a choice on whether we wanted to participate in capitalism or not. We should overthrow it though. But this idea of like leaning towards it. So like I return the wave, like looking at our own mortality and waving back to it, being friends with it, being familiar with it. I think like the Day of the Dead, some cultures celebrate it as a celebration, like connecting to our ancestors, looking at our heritage, acknowledging that we're going to die. Like, I think Halloween isn't super that in American culture. I think it's very much about dressing up because we all just want an excuse to dress up and wear a costume and get candy. But it is an opportunity, and it's like coming from like an atheo-pagan perspective, looking at things with sort of this lens of like the traditional Irish celebration would be Samhain, which is much more of like the end of the growing season. Everything is now dying. It's a chance to look at our own death and mortality and our mortality. So like when I'm talking about stuff like this, one of the things that I like to do around Halloween is like tell people to renew their wills and update that stuff. Like leaning into your own mortality instead of ignoring it or avoiding it makes it far less scary. Your brain almost always reduces its own anxiety when it has a plan, right? So like it's terrible that we have kids do school shooter drills because we can't just regulate guns, but also we choose not to, right? But like same with the tornado drill, we can't regulate tornadoes. This is a better option, I guess, a better example. But like a tornado is scary objectively, and so that force of nature aspect of it. But our brain feels better at like hide under your desk, hold your books. I don't know. Maybe there are better shelters in other places, but in the Midwest, it was like crawl under your desk. Like our desk gets flipped over by the clumsy kid running into it. I think a tornado could move it, but the whole thing is like making us feel better about it, right? Um, and so having a plan makes us feel better. This is not to besmirch tornado plans or active shooter drills, although let's pass some like gun control laws, please. It's one of those things where acknowledging that we have a plan reduces some of the fear associated with something. And so something like doing a will, having a death plan. I'm a therapist, and as I'm saying it, I'm like, yeah, I need to update this. Having somebody who has and knows what like my electronic healthcare record system password is. So if I ever die suddenly or unexpectedly, somebody can alert all my clients so they're not just showing up for their appointment and I'm not there, and or like no one ever hears from me again. So again, having a plan for some of that stuff reduces some of the anxiety. And as somebody who works with people who lose family members, not having a plan sucks. Lots of family drama comes out when people don't have an updated will, when there is no death plan, when there is no inheritance plan. Like if your loved one dies suddenly and then you spend all your time like planning the funeral or which coffin to buy, like, yeah, first of all, you're getting totally scammed out by the big coffin industry. The death industry as a whole makes a ton of profit on a concept that just simply doesn't need to exist. We could just like let people decompose. It makes us uncomfortable. So this whole industry exists to like make us more comfortable and not think about being eaten by worms. I don't know. So we're being scammed. But like again, some of that is like it bypasses the grieving process. In our American culture, we don't have a formalized grieving process. So like we sort of glom on to like doing the details of the funeral and stuff like that. And then we're left with all this complex grief after that. So like it's a messy system. Have a plan. Go buy one of those little mushroom pods that they plant a tree over when you die. And so then you turn into a tree. And that's really lovely. That was what I told my at the time 3-year-olds when our dog died, and he kind of like walked around with that myth where like the Earth is on the back of a giant turtle swimming through space. He kind of viewed like our dog as somehow existing still in space, but a tree like on his back growing out of it. It's like, oh no, like he doesn't exist anymore, but he became the tree. Talking about death to a 3-year-old is more complicated than I thought. Also good to have a plan for how to talk about death. But yes, leaning in. Go hang out in your local cemetery. Go visit a pet cemetery. I do understand that there's a Stephen King story about that, and that might be actually kind of frightening if you've read the story. But death itself isn't scary. Death is the natural conclusion to being alive. So wave back at it. And again, now, so the chorus makes sense a little bit from that perspective of like, now the air is electrified. You thought that nobody knew it, but somebody said it. And so again, this idea of like things we're afraid of, these fears, when they're amorphous in our brains, they're sort of these big things that are maybe hard to unpack. And once we name it, it takes a lot of power away from it. But if it's like a social fear or something, then it can be scary that people know it. Somebody calls it out. But again, I would say we're talking spooky season. We're talking about walking through cemeteries, like leaning into some of these things when we can put words or name something. It's kind of like the whole way that therapy, I don't say the whole way. One of the ways in which therapy is helpful is just having shared language around something, being able to name a constellation of symptoms with like, oh, that's ADHD, or that's an anxiety disorder. And knowing like that's just a thing, that's how that's going to work. Here's how we can respond to it. Here's how we can manage and support and resource our way through it. I think that's really great. So, I like that line that somebody said it, and like the power that comes with naming something. And again, just like the two different melodies, my brain's so happy listening to this song. Let's continue. There's a little more on the video just because it is showing for their new album, which you should get. Wussy Duo or the band Wussy. Like they're great. They've been around for a long time. They have a lot of like sonically fun sounds. Bunch of different bands out there that have two singers, a male and a female singer, and do a lot of fun stuff with that. Wussy's part of that. I think they do some fun things with the music on top of that. And as somebody Like, I listen to heavy metal because I like the heaviness of it. Like, one of the first times I heard Led Zeppelin, I was like, yes, please, more of that wall of sound washing over me. And I think electronica and different bands that do a lot with like different sounds like that can also produce that, at least in my brain, and the way that my brain ADHDs. I think there's that component of this. I haven't done a review of Dan Deacon's song Jimmy Joe Roche, but that's like my song for somebody who doesn't know what it's like to have ADHD to listen to it, because it starts with sort of like one musical thread and then another one comes in, another one, like he just keeps stacking sounds on top of them. And then at some point, like there's one through line that comes back and you focus on that for a while. And then the other sounds kind of come back and it's very distracting. And so, like, explaining that that's what ADHD is like is I need enough stimulation to focus. Doing a second bonus review of Jimmy Joe Roche in this song. Uh, but like anyway, so I like the things, the two sort of refrains going at the same time. My brain sort of randomly chooses which one it's going to listen to each time I listen to the song, and like I really like that. Back to the content of this song, I like again sort of this idea of like, will you be missed as a fear? Is there anyone on our side? Like these fears that we have associated with death is like, did we live a life worth living? Are we going to be missed? Do we have people with us at the end of it all? And like I think there's some validity to those fears. I think there's more validity to those fears than like being just afraid simply of not existing anymore. I think that's one that we could all be better about. Lean in. And then also like be aware, like something like Halloween, Day of the Dead, some of these holidays around things ending, whether it's the end of a season or it's the end of a life. Uh, Connecting to our community and our heritage, our ancestors, if that's meaningful to you, like that's one of those things that I think helps us sort of take stock of our life and be like, yeah, like I need to invest more in my chosen family, or I need to build some of these relationships, or whatever that might look like for you. So, really fun song to deal with something like walking through a graveyard. I think there's a lot of great psychological concepts in here. Obviously, I'm extrapolating a bit, which I've just learned I have to do because modern music isn't about that much. He said, not doing a review of the full Pink Floyd album yet because I would do it for 6 hours. Um, yeah, no, this is a good song. I've been listening to it nonstop for 2 weeks now. And I'm excited for the whole album to come out. And again, like then gone back and listened to Wussy. There's some stuff that I've heard before, just kind of like being an indie alternative music nerd. But I hadn't listened to their whole catalog. They're good. If you like some of this stuff, um, it's good. Spoiler for another song that I'll be doing soon is a similar concept, two different singers and talking over each other, but that'll be in the context of a fight and how couples fight poorly. So, hey, and if you're a Tool fan and you're subscribed, also spoiler alert, we got more Tool songs coming up. I'll play the algorithm game. All right, drop down in the comments. Tell me other songs you would like to hear, how you lean into your fears, what you're doing for Halloween. I don't know, like, subscribe, comment, do all those YouTube things. I appreciate it. I appreciate you hanging out today. Hopefully this is a new song for you and you get to enjoy it along with me. All right, everybody, peace out. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else.